Pick it up, boy. That 20 is more than your kind earns using their brains.
Edward, please. He's just a child.
A child? Denise, your son has been staring at my $50,000 chessboard for 10 minutes. Maybe he thinks it's part of the buffet.
Careful, Edward. Maybe the boy plays.
Plays?
Fine. One game. He beats me. I write him a check for $1 million.
He loses, he and his mother pack their things, walk out of this house tonight, and never come back.
Mr. Langford, sir, I'm begging you. Please.
Mom, it's okay.
You hear that, everyone? The Maid's boy accepts. Somebody set up the board. This won't take long.
You're right, sir. It won't.
9 moves later, the man laughing loudest would lose everything. So let me ask, have you ever been laughed at by someone who had no idea who you really were? To understand what happened that night, you have to go back, past the party, past the bet, into the world that built Miles Brooks, Greenwich, Connecticut. The Langford estate sprawled behind iron gates at the end of a private road. 12 bedrooms, a ballroom, a garage of cars that never got driven. Edward Langford, 56, had built a $4 billion hedge fund by reading people, finding their weakness, and squeezing. Wall Street called him a shark. He took it as a compliment. But money was never really the point. Power was. Langford collected things other men wanted: paintings, vintage watches, people. He liked an audience when he won. He needed one. Guests at his parties learned to laugh at his jokes a half-second early, the way employees laugh at a boss who signs their checks. And in the middle of all that marble and money moved a quiet woman named Denise Brooks. Denise had kept the Langford house for 6 years. She rode the 5:40 a.m. train from Bridgeport, cleaned 12 bedrooms nobody slept in, polished silver nobody used, and rode home in the dark. Her hands were cracked from bleach. Her back ached in ways she never mentioned. She was 41 years old and had been invisible to rich people for most of them. Langford never called her by name. He called her the help. When something went missing, she was questioned first. When nothing went missing, nobody apologized. She took it. Not because she lacked pride, but because pride doesn't pay rent in Bridgeport, and her son needed school books, bus fare, and a future. Once, a guest knocked a wine glass off the terrace rail. Langford billed Denise for it, took it from her paycheck without a word. She found out at the bank. She came back the next morning at 5:40 anyway, because that was the job, and the job was the plan, and the plan was Miles. That son was Miles. 14 years old, tall for his age, thin as a fence post, with eyes that watched everything and a mouth that said almost nothing. After school, he took 2 buses to the estate and waited in the kitchen until his mother finished. House rules: stay in the corner, stay silent, touch nothing. So Miles sat on a stool by the pantry with a library book and made himself small. Straight A's at Bridgeport East. A teacher once told Denise her son had a remarkable mind. Denise framed the note. It hung in their apartment next to a photograph of an old man at a chess table in a park. Remember that photograph. It matters later. Now, about the chessboard. It sat in Langford's study under a brass gallery lamp, walnut and maple, hand-carved pieces imported from Vienna. $50,000. Beside it hung a framed newspaper clipping, yellowed at the edges. Yale Jr. takes intercollegiate chess crown. Langford, 20 years old, smirking over a trophy. 36 years later, he was still that smirk. Chess was his favorite weapon. At dinner parties, he would offer a game to any guest brave enough, then dismantle them while narrating their mistakes out loud. "You see what he did there? That's how people lose money with me, too." Then the line he loved most, delivered with a glass raised. "No one in this room has ever beaten me. No one ever will." The guests would chuckle and look at their shoes. Nobody challenged him. Winning against Edward Langford was bad for business, and losing to him was the price of admission. Everyone in Greenwich knew the rule: you let Edward win. But one Thursday evening in May, something small happened in that study, something nobody was supposed to see. Denise was vacuuming the upstairs hall. Miles carried a tray of glasses past the study door, a job a caterer had handed him without asking, and stopped. The display board was arranged mid-game, frozen in a famous position from a championship match. Except it was wrong. One white knight sat a single square from where history had put it, and that one square broke the entire logic of the position. Miles knew the position the way other kids know song lyrics. He set down the tray. He looked over his shoulder. Then he reached out and slid the knight one square left. A soft click of wood on wood, and the board made sense again. "Interesting," said a voice behind him. A silver-haired man stood in the doorway, holding a glass of club soda. Calm eyes, a gray suit that didn't shout. Miles froze, heart pounding, already rehearsing an apology. But the man only glanced at the corrected knight, then at the boy, the way a jeweler glances at a stone everyone else has walked past. "Most people get that knight wrong," the man said quietly. "You didn't." Miles grabbed his tray and was gone before the man could say another word. He didn't catch the stranger's name that night. He would hear it again soon, spoken with respect, in a room full of people who had none for him. In the kitchen later, Denise read her son's face the way only mothers can. "You touched something," she said. It wasn't a question. Miles started to explain. The knight, the square, the broken position, and she cut him off with a look she'd spent 6 years perfecting. "Baby, listen to me. In this house, we don't correct rich men. We don't get noticed. Head down, hands to yourself, and we get home safe. You hear me?" "Yes, ma'am." He meant it, too. Miles Brooks had no plans to be noticed by anybody in that house. He just wanted to read his book, wait for his mother, and disappear. But 3 weeks later, the invitations went out. Heavy cream cardstock, gold lettering. Langford Capital had crossed $4 billion under management, and Edward Langford was throwing himself a party to make sure the entire Eastern Seaboard knew it. 200 guests, senators, fund managers, a celebrity chef flown in from Manhattan. All week, the house filled with strangers. Florists stacked white roses to the ceiling. Workers strung lights across the lawn like grounded stars. And through it all, Langford walked the halls rehearsing his toast, pausing at the study each evening to admire the board, the clipping, the younger version of himself. A king checking his crown. Denise was ordered to work a double shift, which meant Miles, with nowhere else to go, would be in the kitchen that night, sitting on his stool, keeping his head down. It almost worked. For 3 hours that night, nobody noticed the boy in the kitchen at all. The night of the party, the ballroom glittered like a jewelry case. 200 of the wealthiest people on the East Coast drank champagne under 3 chandeliers, and Edward Langford floated between them, collecting congratulations like rent. Around 10 o'clock, the caterers ran short of hands. A manager pointed at Miles. "Carry this. Go." So the boy in the second-hand sneakers walked tray after tray through a room of tuxedos, eyes down, exactly as his mother had taught him. It worked until the study. The doors stood open for the party, the $50,000 board glowing under its lamp. Miles only meant to pass by, but the position from 3 weeks ago was back on display, and his feet stopped before his judgment could catch them. 5 seconds was all it took.
Well, look at this. Langford's voice cut through the room like a fork on glass.
He stood in the doorway with a dozen guests behind him, scotch in hand, grin already loaded. "The help's kid, studying my board. You like that, boy? You know what it costs? More than your mother makes in a year." Laughter, the kind that travels. More guests drifted over, smelling a show. Behind them, Denise appeared and went pale.
Langford reached into his pocket, peeled a 20 from a money clip, and tossed it at the boy's feet. The bill spun, floated, landed on the marble. "Pick it up. That's more than your kind earns using their brains." Miles didn't move. He looked at the bill, then at the man, and said nothing at all. The silence stretched just long enough to embarrass somebody. A tipsy voice from the crowd broke it. "Careful, Edward. Maybe the boy plays." And there it was. The opening Langford never refused. An audience. A victim. A stage. He set down his scotch and spread his arms like a ringmaster. "You know what? Tonight, I'm feeling generous. 1 game. The kid beats me, undefeated in this house for 20 years, and I write him a check for $1 million. He paused for the gasp and got it. He loses, he and his mother pack their things and never set foot here again. "Mr. Langford, sir, please." Denise pushed through the crowd, tray abandoned, voice shaking. "He's 14. We don't want trouble. I'm begging you." "Then your boy should keep his eyes off my things." Miles looked at his mother, at her cracked hands, twisting the hem of her apron, at 6 years of swallowed insults standing in one trembling woman. Then he looked down at the $20 bill lying on the marble like a dare. Somewhere in his pocket, his fingers found a small wooden king, its crown worn smooth by 2 generations of hands. "Okay," Miles said. "1 game." The room erupted. Laughter, applause, someone calling for the board. Denise closed her eyes. Langford grinned. "You hear that, everyone? The Maid's boy accepts. This won't take long." He was right about that. He just had the winner wrong. Because what nobody in that ballroom knew, not even the man holding the money clip, was where that quiet boy had spent every Saturday of his childhood, and who had been waiting there to teach him. While the staff cleared a table in the center of the ballroom and 200 guests pressed in for the show, Miles Brooks stood very still. And in his mind, he was 9 years old again, in a park in Harlem, watching an old man set up a chessboard with hands like tree roots. Theodore Mason, Denise's father. Everybody at the stone tables in Marcus Garvey Park just called him Pops. For 40 years, Pops had been a legend nobody famous ever heard of. A hotel doorman by trade, a chess player by calling. He spent his Saturdays at those stone tables, taking on all comers for $5 a game. College kids, club players, once a touring master who stopped smiling after 12 moves. Pops beat them all, then shook their hands and gave half of them their money back. He never played a rated tournament. Entry fees cost money, and money went to rent, to Denise, and later to a grandson with watchful eyes. The chess world never learned his name. The park knew. The park was enough. Miles was 5 when Pops first sat him at a board. While other kids learned cartoons, Miles learned that a knight moves like an L and thinks like a knife. Every Saturday for 6 years, rain or shine. Pops taught openings the way other grandfathers taught fishing. Patiently, with stories. He taught endgames on a board with a missing pawn they replaced with a bottle cap. And he taught one lesson above all the others. The board doesn't ask your color, son. Doesn't ask your zip code or your daddy's bank account. 64 squares. Same pieces for both sides. It's the only fair place I've ever found in this country. So when you sit down equal. By 11, Miles was beating everyone at the stone tables, except the old man himself. Pops studied his grandson across the board one October afternoon and saw something that made his eyes shine. "You're better than me, boy," he said. "Don't tell nobody yet." That winter, Pops's heart began to fail. The last Saturday, he was too weak for the park, so they set the old board on his hospital blanket. Pops could barely lift the pieces. He played anyway. Halfway through, he stopped, picked up his white king, the one with the crown worn smooth from 40 years of his thumb, and folded it into his grandson's palm. "Listen to me now," he whispered. "One day, somebody's gonna look at you and see nothing but a poor black kid. They'll laugh before you ever touch a piece. Don't argue. Don't shout. You let the board speak. The board never lies." He died on a Tuesday. Miles was 11 years old. He didn't cry at the funeral. He went to the park instead, sat at the empty stone table, and played both sides of his grandfather's favorite game until the streetlights came on. After that, the game went underground. A donated laptop, free chess sites, a username that gave nothing away, Stone Table 11. 3 years, more than 10,000 games, often past midnight with the screen brightness low so his mother wouldn't see the light under his door. He studied Grandmaster games the way preachers study scripture, replaying them move by move until the patterns lived in his hands. By 14, Stone Table 11 carried a rating of 2,412. Master territory. Strong club players avoided him, and he had developed a specialty, almost a signature. He hunted aggressive players, the ones who attacked early, grabbed pawns, chased their queen across the board like a bully chasing lunch money. Miles had built a private collection of traps for exactly that kind of man. He could smell arrogance through a screen. His mother never knew. Not really. She saw the laptop and assumed homework. Chess was the one secret Miles kept from her, not out of shame, but because the game was the last room in the world where his grandfather was still alive. He wasn't ready to share that room with anybody. Now, in a Greenwich ballroom, a crowd of strangers laughed at the Maid's son, and a man worth $4 billion cracked his knuckles over a $50,000 board. Miles pulled out the chair and sat down. Under the table, his thumb traced the worn crown of a wooden king. "Somebody's gonna look at you and see nothing but a poor black kid." "Okay, Pops," he thought. "Let's let the board speak." They set the table in the center of the ballroom, beneath the largest chandelier. Langford insisted on that. If he was going to teach the Helps kid a lesson, the whole eastern seaboard was going to watch him do it. 2 staff members carried the $50,000 board from the study like pallbearers. Phones came out everywhere. Dozens of them, raised over shoulders, red recording lights blinking like little eyes. A hedge fund manager's nephew opened a live stream. 40 viewers, then 200, then more. Remember those phones. They matter later. As Langford rolled up his sleeves, a silver-haired man in a quiet gray suit stepped out of the crowd. "Edward, if there's money on this, you'll want a neutral referee." "Walter!" Langford lit up. "Everyone! Walter Hayes, Grand Master Walter Hayes. The real thing, ranked among the best in the country back in his day. Perfect. Now nobody can say I didn't beat the boy fairly." Miles looked up and recognized the calm eyes instantly, the man from the study, the one who'd watched him fix the night. Hayes gave no sign they had ever met. He simply took a position beside the table and asked, in a voice that carried, "State the terms, Edward, clearly, for the room." Langford obliged, loving every syllable. $1 million to the boy if he wins. If he loses, he and his mother leave my employment and my property. Tonight. Witnessed, Hayes said. 200 phones witnessed it too. Langford dropped into his chair and spun the board. I play white. I always play white. He smirked at the boy across from him. First lesson, free of charge. White moves first. Means I attack, you suffer. Miles said nothing. He centered his pieces one by one, the way Pops had taught him. Touch each soldier before the battle. Know where everyone lives. Move one. Langford slammed his king's pawn forward 2 squares, hard enough to rattle the rank behind it. The classic opening of a man announcing himself. A few guests applauded, actually applauded, as if pushing a pawn deserved a trophy. Miles answered before the applause faded. Pawn to meet pawn, center against center, the oldest answer in the book. 3 seconds, maybe less. Fast hands, Langford said. Fast hands lose fast games. Move 2. And here came the queen. Langford swung his most powerful piece into the open early, sliding her toward the boy's king side, eyeing the weakest square on the board, the one beside the black king that only the king defends. It was a bar fight move, a 4-move checkmate attempt, the kind of attack that destroys beginners and embarrasses everyone else. Somebody in the crowd who knew the game whispered to his date, "He's going for the scholar's mate, trying to end a child in 4 moves." Miles glanced at the queen. Then he did something small and strange. He smiled. Not at Langford, at the board. The way you smile at an old friend telling a joke you've heard 100 times. His knight came out, calm as a doorman, defending the threat and developing a piece in the same breath. 4 seconds. At the edge of the table, Grandmaster Walter Hayes stopped watching the game and started watching the boy, because Hayes had seen that exact reply 10,000 times, but almost never from amateurs. Amateurs panic when a queen charges at them. They throw pawns in front of her like sandbags. This boy hadn't flinched. His knight didn't just defend. It claimed the center and asked the queen a quiet question. And now what? Move 3. Langford developed his bishop, aiming it down the long diagonal at the boy's king like a sniper finding a window. 3 moves, he announced to the room, from ending this. He checked his watch theatrically. Anyone want to order the kid a cab? He'll be leaving soon. Laughter rippled. In the back, Denise gripped a door frame with both hands, lips moving in silent prayer. A waitress touched her shoulder gently and stayed beside her. Then Miles made his 3rd move, and the room got its first surprise of the night. He pushed a pawn on the side of the board, a quiet little move that seemed to do nothing, except it left another of his pawns sitting alone, undefended, directly in the path of Langford's queen. A free snack, a gift, wrapped and ribboned. The whisperer in the crowd groaned. Oh no, the kid just hung a pawn. He blundered. Langford saw it too. His grin came back, wide and hungry. You see that, everyone? This is what happens when you let them sit at tables they don't belong at. His hand floated over the queen. I almost feel bad taking it. Hayes's eyes narrowed, a flicker, gone in half a second. He had seen the pawn too, and unlike everyone else in the ballroom, he had also seen what was waiting behind it. Under the table, Miles's thumb brushed the worn wooden crown one more time. The trap his grandfather had taught him on a rainy Saturday, the one for bullies who chase lunch money, was open for business. All it needed now was an arrogant man's hand on a queen. Langford picked her up. Move 4. The queen took the bait. Langford snatched the undefended pawn and held it up between 2 fingers like a trophy, turning it for the crowd. 1 down, he said. The rest coming soon. Light applause. someone whistled. What he didn't notice, what almost nobody noticed, was where his queen now stood, deep inside enemy territory, far from home, surrounded by squares that belonged to a 14-year-old. Here's the thing about traps, the way Pops used to explain them at the stone tables. You don't catch a wolf by chasing it. You catch it by making it hungry. You leave meat on the ground, one piece at a time, each piece a little deeper into the canyon. The wolf thinks it's winning. The wolf thinks it's the smartest animal in the valley, right up until the moment it turns around and sees how far it walked in. And the walls. Miles answered move 4 without hesitation. His second knight stepped out, quiet as the first, and aimed itself, though nobody but Hayes could see it yet, at a square 3 moves into the future. In his head, his grandfather's voice kept time like a metronome. Develop with a threat. Make every soldier earn his square. Let the big man eat. Move 5. Langford, feeling generous and invincible, grabbed a second pawn. This one sat in front of the boy's queen side, and, taking it, pulled the white queen even further from her king, like a general wandering away from his army to loot a farmhouse. The crowd loved it. 2 pawns up. The billionaire was winning. Glasses clinked somewhere in the back. Anyone keeping score by material would say Langford was ahead. But chess isn't scored by material. It's scored by one thing only. And Miles's answer to move 5 showed exactly what. His dark-squared bishop slid out along the diagonal and settled onto a square where it stared, unblinking, straight toward the White King's front porch. Now count the pieces pointed at Langford's home rank. 1 knight, 2 knights, a bishop, a queen still sitting calmly in her starting position, like a storm that hadn't decided when to land. Langford reached for his glass and found it empty. He signaled a waiter without looking, and the room watched a billionaire wait for his own staff for the first time in memory. Move 6. For the first time all night, Edward Langford had to think. He stared at the board, and somewhere behind his eyes, an old instinct from his Yale days woke up and started screaming. His queen was 2 pawns rich and completely alone. His knights were still in their stables. His king stood in the middle of the board with his coat unbuttoned. And the boys' pieces, when had they all gotten out? Stood arranged in a pattern Langford almost recognized. Something from a book he'd skimmed 30 years ago. Something with a warning attached. The room noticed the silence. 30 seconds. A minute. The smirk on Langford's face stayed in place, but it had stopped reaching his eyes. He pulled a silk handkerchief from his breast pocket and pressed it once against his hairline. "Taking your time, Edward?" someone called, friendly. The laugh that followed was thinner than the ones before it. He moved at last, pulling his queen back 1 square, a small retreat dressed up as repositioning. The first backward step of the night. Miles answered in 3 seconds, castling his king to safety, his rook sliding over like a door bolting shut. Everything tidy, everything connected. At the rope line of spectators, a portfolio manager leaned toward Hayes and whispered, "Walter, level with me. The kid's lucky, right?" Hayes didn't take his eyes off the board. Luck moves fast and thinks slow. That boy is doing the opposite. He paused. "I've seen this set up before. At master tournaments. The queen hunt, the quiet development, the patience. He isn't defending, gentlemen. He's herding." Herding? Herding what? The most expensive piece on the board. Word of that exchange traveled through the crowd the way whispers do, faster than champagne trays. People who had been smirking started narrating quietly into their phones.
The live stream's viewer count rolled past 4,000. In Bridgeport, in Harlem, in dorm rooms and barbershops, strangers were starting to watch a 14-year-old in second-hand sneakers stare down a billionaire. By the doorway, Denise had stopped praying. She was watching her son's face, that calm, unhurried face, and seeing somebody else in it. Her father's stillness, her father's eyes. Her hand rose slowly to her mouth. All these years, she thought, all those Saturdays. The laptop light under his door. She wasn't watching a boy in trouble anymore. She was watching her father's last lesson, played out loud. Across the table, Langford rolled his shoulders and forced the grin back up. "Cute," he said. "You've got some moves, I'll give you that. Junior chess club at school?" He leaned in, lowering his voice so only the first row could hear. "Enjoy it while it lasts, boy. Men like me don't lose to people like you. The world doesn't allow it." Miles looked up from the board. For the first time since sitting down, he met the billionaire's eyes and held them. "My grandfather used to say, 'The board doesn't ask your color, sir.'" He nodded at the position between them. "It's your move." Somewhere in the crowd, a phone camera zoomed in on Langford's face. The clip of what it caught there, the flicker, the doubt, the first crack in 30 years of certainty, would be replayed 11 million times before the week was out. But the moment the internet would never stop talking about, the one that turned a party trick into history, was still 3 moves away. Move 7. The move that changed the room. Miles reached for his knight, the first one, the doorman, and set it down on a square deep in white territory, directly where Langford's pawn could take it. Then he folded his hands and waited. The crowd gasped. Even the ones who didn't play understood a free horse when they saw one. "He's cracking," somebody said. "The pressure got him." Langford laughed out loud, relief flooding his face like color returning. "First the pawns, now this. Thank you, boy." He took the knight and dropped it beside the board with the other trophies. "Walter, you were saying something about herding?" Walter Hayes stood up. A grandmaster does not stand up at a casual party game. The people who knew that went quiet first, and the silence spread outward from them like ice across a pond. Hayes studied the position for a long moment. Then he spoke, loudly enough for every phone to catch it. "Ladies and gentlemen, for the record, that night was not a blunder. It was an invitation, and what you are watching now is a forced checkmate. Calculated, I suspect, from the boy's very first move." For 3 full seconds, nobody in the ballroom breathed. Then the room flipped. It happened the way crowds always flip, not gradually, but all at once, like a sail catching opposite wind. The guests who had laughed at the $20 bill pressed closer to the table, phones first. The live stream count spun past 40,000. Someone in the comments typed the question that would trend by morning. Who is this kid? The shift had sound, too. The laughter was gone, replaced by the low, electric hum of 200 people choosing a new favorite. A waiter set down his tray to watch. The celebrity chef came out of the kitchen, apron still on. Even the string quartet stopped pretending to tune. Near the windows stood a heavy-set man named Charles Whitfield, founder of Whitfield Pension Partners, the largest single investor in Langford capital. $800 million of teachers' and firefighters' retirements parked in Edward Langford's judgment. Whitfield wasn't watching the board. He was watching Langford's hands. They had started to tremble, and Langford knew it. That was the cruelest part. He could feel the room leaving him, the same room that had laughed on cue for 20 years.
and the old instinct that built $4 billion told him exactly what to do. Raise. 2 million, he announced, too loud. Let's make it interesting. 2 million against anything. You scared, boy? The desperation in it embarrassed everyone. A senator studied his shoes. 2 women exchanged a look over their champagne. Miles didn't even look up from the board. The bet stands, sir. 1 million. A beat. It's still your move. Somewhere behind the crowd, Denise Brooks stood taller than she had in 6 years. And at the table, Edward Langford looked down at a position that was quietly closing around his king like a fist. 2 moves from a checkmate, the whole world was about to watch. 11 minutes. That's how long Edward Langford stared at the board before touching a piece on move 8. The ballroom waited. 200 guests, 46,000 strangers on a live stream, and 1 mother by the door, all watching a billionaire search for an exit that Walter Hayes had already announced did not exist. He tried anyway. He shoved a knight back toward his king, a bodyguard arriving late to a fire, and let go of the piece like it burned. And now, at last, the Black Queen moved. All night she had waited on her starting square, the storm that hadn't decided when to land. Miles lifted her gently, no slamming, Pops never allowed slamming, and swept her across the whole board in one long diagonal into the heart of White's position. She settled onto her square with a click of wood on wood that everyone heard because no one was making any other sound at all. Check, Miles said quietly. Look at the White King now, penned into the corner of his own kingdom. His escape squares occupied, not by enemy pieces, but by his own. His rook stood in one corner like furniture too heavy to move. His pawns, never advanced, walled him in from the front. The knight that arrived late blocked the last door. Every guard Edward Langford owned had become a wall of his own prison. There was exactly one legal move. Langford made it, sliding his king into the final empty square, the way a man backs into the last corner of a burning room. His hand trembled so badly the piece rocked when he set it down. Move 9. The ballroom seemed to lean in. The chandelier light caught the edge of the board. Somewhere in the silence, you could hear ice melting in abandoned glasses, the hum of phone cameras zooming, the short, shallow breathing of a man who had bet $1 million on his own superiority. Miles took 1 second, maybe 2. Then his remaining knight rose, hopped the fence of pawns, the L that thinks like a knife, and landed on the one square from which no answer has ever existed in the history of the game. Checkmate, Miles said. Not loud, not triumphant. He said it the way his grandfather used to say it at the stone tables, softly, almost kindly, the way you tell somebody news they should have seen coming. 9 moves. The smothered mate, the oldest humiliation in chess, a king buried alive by his own army. Hayes would explain it to reporters later, step by step. The hung pawns that pulled the queen out of position, the knight sacrifice that forced open the door, the quiet, developing moves that aimed every black piece at one square. 9 moves, planned like 9 sentences of a single argument. Then Miles reached into his pocket. He brought out a small wooden king, its crown worn smooth by 40 years of an old man's thumb and 3 years of a boy's, and stood it gently beside the board, facing the fallen position. "This is for the man who taught me," he said. He played at stone tables in a park his whole life for $5 a game. He was better than everyone in this room. Nobody ever knew his name. 3 seconds of absolute silence. Then a single pair of hands began to applaud. Slow,
deliberate, ringing off the marble. Grandmaster Walter Hayes. A heartbeat later, the dam broke, and the ballroom erupted. Waiters, senators, billionaires' wives, and 46,000 strangers flooding a live stream chat with one word typed over and over. King. 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 Denise crossed the floor she had cleaned for 6 years, and no one dared stop her. She took her son's face in both hands and pressed her forehead to his, and the cameras caught that too. And Edward Langford sat exactly where he was, alone in the eye of all that applause, staring down at his $50,000 board, at a king smothered by his own soldiers, on a battlefield where, for the first time in his life, his money had counted for nothing. The applause was still rolling when Edward Langford found his voice. All right, he stood, straightening his jacket, reaching for the old grin the way a man pats empty pockets for keys. Fun's over, everyone. Hell of a party trick. The kid's been coached, obviously, but cute. Very cute. The applause died. The room watched him. The bet? He waved a hand. Come on, be serious. Nobody hands $1 million to the housekeeper's kid over a board game. It was a joke. Everybody knew it was a joke. Nobody laughed. That's the thing about rooms like that. They can smell weakness, because most of them got rich feeding on it. Walter Hayes spoke first, in the dry tone of a man reading a verdict. You stated the terms yourself, Edward, clearly. For the room, at my request. $1 million, witnessed by 200 guests and recorded, as I understand it, on several dozen phones, including a live stream. He glanced toward the crowd. How many watching now? 61,000, somebody answered, and the number landed on Langford like a roof beam. So, Hayes folded his hands. You can honor the bet. Or 61,000 people can watch a $4 billion fund manager explain that his word means nothing the moment it costs him something. In your business, Edward, which is more expensive? Before Langford could answer, Charles Whitfield stepped out of the crowd, and the room rearranged itself around his weight. $800 million, Edward, he said quietly. That's what my pensioners have riding on your judgment. Tonight, I watched your judgment up close. You picked a fight with a child to feel tall. You missed a trap a grandmaster says was 9 moves deep, and your first instinct, in front of all of us, was to welch. Whitfield buttoned his coat. My office will call yours Monday. The color drained from Langford's face in real time on 61,000 screens. Langford grabbed for the only rope he knew. Walter, be reasonable. We'll handle this privately. My attorneys can draft something. A scholarship, maybe. A gesture. The word you're looking for, Hayes said, is payment. Then Denise Brooks did something she had never done in 6 years of service. She stepped forward and spoke to her employer without being spoken to. Mr. Langford, for 6 years I cleaned your house. You billed me for a glass your guest broke. You called me the help. For so long, I wonder if you ever learned my name. Her voice did not shake at all. It's Denise. Denise Brooks. That young man is Miles Theodore Brooks. We were never beneath you, sir. You just needed us to be. Somewhere in the crowd, someone began to clap again, and Hayes raised a hand to stop it. Not yet. The room understood. The boy wasn't finished. Miles rose from the table. He walked to where the $20 bill still lay on the marble. It had been there the whole game, and nobody had dared touch it. He picked it up, smoothed it flat, and set it gently on the board beside the smothered white king. "Keep it, sir," he said. "You're going to need it more than I will." He wasn't smiling when he said it. He wasn't angry either. He sounded like the board itself, patient, level, final. The clip of that moment, the bill, the king, the boy's steady voice, would become one of the most replayed 8 seconds on the internet that year. And Edward Langford stood in the middle of his own ballroom, under his own chandelier, surrounded by 200 guests who would not meet his eyes. A man, suddenly, completely alone, in the house that 20 minutes earlier had belonged to him in every way that mattered. That night, the guests filed out early. The valet line was quiet, and on 61,000 screens, then 100,000, then 1,000,000, the video kept spreading, carrying the name Miles Brooks up and the name Edward Langford down. By sunrise, the video had 4 million views. By Sunday night, 14. The internet, which names everything, named Edward Langford within hours. The 9-move billionaire. It followed him onto cable news, into the group chats of his own employees, onto the floor of the stock exchange. A financial network played the checkmate clip on loop beside a graph of his fund's returns. The host didn't even have to say anything. He just raised an eyebrow, and 1,000,000 viewers understood. The Monday after the party, Miles went to school like nothing happened, because his mother insisted. It didn't help. Kids he'd never spoken to lined the hallway filming as he walked to first period. His algebra teacher asked him to sign a chessboard. Reporters waited by the gates at dismissal. 3 talk shows called the principal's office before lunch. Through all of it, Miles gave exactly 1 interview. 2 minutes, local news, standing next to his mother. They asked how it felt to humiliate a billionaire. He said, "I didn't humiliate anybody. The position did. He just couldn't hear it warning him." Monday morning, Whitfield Pension Partners filed notice of full redemption. $800 million. Out. By Wednesday, 3 more institutional investors followed, because in Langford's business, judgment is the only product, and the whole world had just watched his judgment lose to a 14-year-old in 9 moves. Then try to skip the bill. The bet itself never reached a courtroom. It didn't need to. Langford's own attorneys laid out the situation for him. A clearly stated wager, 200 witnesses, dozens of recordings, a grandmaster who had formally called for the terms on camera. Fighting it would mean months of headlines. Paying it would mean 1. He paid. The check arrived at a small apartment in Bridgeport on a Tuesday, the same day of the week Pops had died. Denise held it in both hands for a long time. Then she sat down at the kitchen table under the framed note about her son's remarkable mind and cried the way you cry when something is finally over. She never cleaned another house. As for Langford Capital, it didn't survive the year. The redemptions became a run. The run became a fire sale. And by spring, the fund that once managed $4 billion was being wound down by lawyers who billed by the hour and didn't laugh at anybody's jokes. Langford kept the mansion. Barely. He sold the art. He sold the cars. The $50,000 chessboard went to auction, where an anonymous bidder bought it for half its value and donated it, with what can only be called a sense of humor, to a public school chess club in Harlem. Nobody ever proved who the bidder was, but Walter Hayes smiled a particular smile whenever reporters asked. And Miles? 1 year later, a 15-year-old in a blazer 1 size too big stood on a stage holding the state youth championship trophy over his head. It was Miles's first official tournament season. He hadn't lost a single rated game. In the front row,
A silver-haired grandmaster applauded the way he had applauded in a ballroom once. First and longest. The training that followed was nothing like the movies. Hayes didn't teach Miles tricks. The boy had plenty. He taught him calm under tournament clocks, openings deep enough to survive masters, and how to lose. Because in rated chess, unlike ballrooms, everyone loses eventually. Miles absorbed it all the way he absorbed everything. Quietly, completely, twice as fast as expected. Hayes had taken the boy on the week after the party. Not as a charity case, he was clear about that with every reporter who asked. "I've coached prodigies for 40 years, he told one. Talent is common. What that young man has is rarer. He thinks in complete plans. His grandfather built that, one Saturday at a time, at a stone table in a public park. The chess world owes that man a debt it never paid." Miles found a way to start paying it. Most of the $1 million went into something called the Mason Foundation, named for a hotel doorman the chess world never knew. It pays for boards, coaches, and tournament entry fees for kids from working neighborhoods. The entry fees being the point, because talent was never the thing the Brooks family lacked. Money for the ticket was. The foundation's first project? 12 new stone chess tables in Marcus Garvey Park, arranged around the old ones, with a small bronze plaque that reads, "For Pops, the board never lies." Denise runs it. She turned out to be ferociously good at it. 6 years of managing a billionaire's household will teach you logistics, and a lifetime of being underestimated will teach you exactly which kids to look for. She knows their faces on sight. They look like her son. They look like her father. Her last act as a housekeeper had been short. She rode the 5:40 train one final morning, set her keys on Langford's marble counter, and left a one-line note beside them. It said, "We quit. The help." On Saturdays, always Saturdays, Miles takes the train to Harlem and teaches at the stone tables himself. Last month, a 6-year-old girl with butterfly clips in her hair sat down across from him. Miles set up the pieces one by one, touching each soldier before the battle. Then he picked up a knight and held it where she could see it. "This one's my favorite," he said. "It moves like an L and thinks like a knife." The girl grinned. Somewhere, you have to believe, an old doorman grinned back. Pops used to say the board was the only fair place he ever found. His grandson is busy building more of them. As for the worn wooden king with the smooth crown, it doesn't sit in a trophy case. It rides in Miles's pocket to every tournament, every park, every Saturday. Some inheritances are worth more than $1 million. And Edward Langford? The last anyone heard, he was consulting, which is what Wall Street calls it when the phone stops ringing. People who visited his emptied mansion say the study is bare now, except for one thing he refuses to throw away: a $20 bill framed behind glass. Whether he keeps it as a wound or a lesson, only he knows. Here's why I told you this story. Somewhere right now, there's a kid being laughed at by someone with more money and less imagination. Maybe that kid is yours. Maybe that kid was you. I need you both to remember, the board doesn't ask. It just waits for your move. So here's my question for you, and I read every comment. What's the hidden talent somebody in your life is sleeping on? Yours, your kids, your grandfather's? Tell me their story below. If this one moved you, share it with someone who needs it today. And subscribe, because every week I tell stories about the people the world counted out, right up until the moment it had to count them.